wanted to share a little bit about the management that I'm doing here on this stand of black locusts. So this was here when we bought the property 10 years ago, and obviously these trees were significantly smaller. 10 years of growth for black locusts is quite a lot. And so what I've been doing, I think I've described this in other videos. This hill, the house is up there, and this hill, they just use this as a dump. So the ground is really trashy, and it's not just like superficial trash that you can pick up. It's sort of like buried in because they also put up that little garage, which I love, but when they were machining that area, they sort of just bulldozed fill on top of the garbage. So it's really pretty bad scene to clean up. And I've sort of just accepted that, hey, this is actually a beautiful stand of black locust, and I can just manage it for that and not try to push this over towards food production, because there's enough garbage buried there that I don't think I really want to do that. But wood for lumber and for firewood is a great option there. So this is a super interesting area. Japanese knotweed probably was brought in with the fill because it's nowhere else here. And for 10 years, just for people who are interested in Japanese knotweed and how to work with it, this little path is how I get down here. Goes right up to the yard there. And the only thing I've ever done is cut a path down here, either with the scythe or a lawnmower. And the knotweed has never migrated farther to the south here, farther to the east, farther to the north. It's never moved. And so there's a few things I think that are going on there. First, you've got a pretty closed canopy from the black locust. We're still early spring here, so actually we're right in the most beautiful peak bloom of the locust. So it's normally a little bit thicker than this, obviously, and I'll talk in a minute, I just did thinning here. So knotweed is very happy in that kind of shade, probably its natural habitat, riparian corridor, highly disturbed areas, as a low stratum. So it's there doing its thing. It's not really moving that much because there's no big soil disturbances over here. If I were to go in and dig and do something heavy, or if I were to clear this forest out or whatever, the knotweed would absolutely jump into that space and fill it. But a little bit of mowing around the edges has been all I needed to not have it move, which wasn't even my goal, because it's a wonderful plant to work with. For example, over here, if this were an area where I wanted to plant into, and I did start a little bit of that, I start to, well, I might as well talk about this now. So what I'm doing now is managing for poles. And I'm taking out some of the small, these were alive, some of them were dead, some of them were alive. And if, like for example, this guy right here, he's really 80% to the top of the canopy, so that can kind of stay. But if it's 3/4 to the canopy or less, they've sort of been left behind in this generation. And black locust needing full sun to really thrive it probably won't catch up. So you can thin those out if you want. This is a pretty small pole to do much with. This is a nice size, already quite able to support a building. So we're leaving, and these happen to be quite straight, which is really wonderful. So I've got a lot of very straight pole wood. So what I've been doing over the years is just limbing them up and letting them grow pretty straight and tall, and thinning out selectively as we go. Here, for example, we've got 2. I would probably continue by taking the smaller one out. And same thing here. These 2 are both growing, but they're pretty darn close. You can see their canopies are commingled up there. So if I would take this smaller one out, that'll get a much nicer post. So just really thinning down to a reasonable level. And what I was saying about the knotweed here is that, let's say, so as I'm thinning, I'm taking out some poles and chipping them. A friend of mine lent me a chipper, which is really nice. And a lot of the other stuff I've been just organizing in lines. It's always a good way because then you have access and you don't put branches where you might need to walk. This corridor here, I had been thinning out thinking that I would plant into it, but then when I ran into the trash, I decided not to. Anyway, so the knotweed is really a pretty incredible plant in terms of, let's say I was going to plant something into this line eventually. The knotweed, all you need to do is 2 steps. A little awkward with the camera, but really I didn't do much of anything just now. Just literally walked over this. And look at that. Beautiful mulch. Don't even need to cut it. And then it's going to do that again. And so here they grow in these kind of tight clusters, these clumps. Coming from a base like this. So you just sort of get it together, step it over, and it's possibly, I would say it's one of maybe the easiest plants to manage that I've ever come across. I mean, look at that beautiful mulch biomass, and then it'll come right back. And if you can imagine, let's say we thinned out, we're looking south here. Let's say I thinned out the black locust, every other one in the frame here. So you get these 2 small ones out, one of these 2 big ones, and 2 of these 4. That's gonna let a lot of light down. And then we had this Japanese knotweed that we're stepping over, and we planted a row of whatever it was that we thought was gonna do well here, that we wanted to grow. Could be peaches and pears and apricots, or pawpaws and persimmons, or nut trees or hazels, or whatever that you wanted and worked well with the soil. And then you had all this Japanese knotweed, and all you had to do, the thicker the stand the better, all you had to do was walk over that knotweed, have it totally mulch the row out, and then grow back. And then as the trees are growing, they'll get lost in the knotweed, but they're in a row so you can find them easily, and you just step the knotweed over. You only have to do that probably 3 or 4 times in the season. That's not a lot of work. You don't even need a blade. You just crack it over, and it can overtop all the other weeds. You know, mugwort, a much harder thing to manage. You can't step it over. If you step it over, it'll just pop back up. Nothing happens. It doesn't crack like that. The knotweed stems are hollow, so they crack. It's a fantastically easy plant to manage. I mean, look at this. You got a big clump here. You just go to the bottom right there and step it over. And it's a perfect mulch. You really couldn't ask for a better plant to manage. The riparian corridors that are quote unquote infested with knotweed could so easily be an ally for furthering natural succession. You know, people want to go spray the knotweed and plant the natives. Just crack the knotweed over and plant the natives. Your natives will establish much better and quicker and more effectively anyway. Of course, there's a little bit of trouble in riparian corridors because so much of the stuff gets washed away when, you know, in the spring or winter when you have big flows. That is tough. But anyway, so yeah, that's basically what I'm doing in here is thinning down. I've got some nice wood chip to mulch my little pond planting here. I was doing this without a wood chipper before, which is fine. It's just a little bit, obviously more voluminous material to work with. So that's when you just sort of put it in a windrow where you might end up wanting to plant something and break it down a little bit with loppers or a machete. and then step it over, and it'll break down over time. Yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to touch on here. And I think going forward, like I said, I've only done the first this bit here and into that region for the first round of thinning, and I'm gonna get beautiful poles. I've got to go up the hill a little bit, which is a little bit tougher to access, so pulling the poles out will be slightly more annoying. But up there we've got you know, this is one plant with 5 stems, so I'm going to thin that down probably to 1 stem. Right here, this is one plant with 2 stems. So all of those multi-stemmed plants get thinned out. A note on how to do that real quick. Here, so here we had 2 stems on this one, and you really have to try to find the stem that you're going to remove, smaller or weaker or more angled or whatever. You want to find where the bark is included. So here, this is called included bark, and this was a weak union. You can see that in a strong storm, this could have snapped off and really messed things up. But if I had cut it up here and left that stump, that's not as good as if you can cut it at an angle right to where it joins the other tree. This will be able to heal a little bit quicker for this stem. Either way, this is nice because it's super low down, so we're not losing almost any stem as this one grows. So, as I mentioned, these are good sized poles for fence post right now. And if we want to get them up to like really put a big barn up or a full size building, I would say we've got another 5 years at least. And of course, that number can really be very different. If I leave a lot of these smaller trees, it's going to take a longer time for the remaining trees to get big. So, for example, we've got these 3 touching here, and their crowns are all commingled there. So they're all going to grow. They're fine. They're all equal. But if we picked one, you know, just whichever looked the biggest and straightest, although they're pretty equivalent. If we picked one, let's say this one, its canopy would fluff up and take up all that space, and it would grow way faster. So if we want to get to a certain number of large diameter poles quicker, that's the kind of thinning we need to do. And of course, there are tables for this, you know, maximum stocking rate, stocking density. There's a whole forestry science to it. But, you know, just intuitively off the cuff, the canopy is what really counts. The canopy is what's driving all the growth, of course. And so, you know, we might want to leave one of these 2, and we would leave this one, because as you can see, that canopy is over here, this one's canopy is over here, and then there's these 3 canopies in here. So if we thin that down to 1, that'll have much more space, and then it'll butt these, and that's about a good spacing for now. But what a glorious time of year with this, the fragrance, and they're so sweet. When the blossoms get full size, I mean, my daughter was eating bowlfuls of them last night. They're just an absolute candy. And then they go on to be some of the best rot-resistant firewood, great firewood or rot-resistant lumber or polewood, in-ground contact for, you know, 50 to 75 years.